Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Bad Luck Gamer, and we're back now with part 4, I think, of the spell changes. There will be one more part. This is not the final part. It's just in order to not make an hour-long video, and I think I've just determined that I'm just going to, even after the release of the remaster to the public on the 15th, I'll probably just keep doing this content at least for the rest of this week, because I do want to get domain spell changes and I do want to get ancestry changes into a video. And well, there were just a lot of spell changes, actually. Like, maybe not like as deep as people would have wanted, but there was a significant amount to take up several hours of video time, and that's cut down from what I've done. So before we get into it, I do want to say that Paizo did provide to me, as one of the reviewers, the player core and GM core, but this is not a sponsored video, so all thoughts and opinions here are my own. So getting started, let's just get into it. I did miss last time. The suggestion spell is in the book, and it has the subtle trait now. So yay, another spell that has a subtle trait that allows us to manipulate people more out in the open, which is a lot better. Like, that's always one of the hard things about things like charm or suggestion is you couldn't do it in a public place, because then other people would realize, hey, he's casting magic on the individual. Now you can get away with it. So I think that's overall cool. And, you know, I'm reading your comments. I see it. So whenever there's a correction that won't take too much time, I will put it in the video. And let's go ahead and get on with the video here. Breath of Life actually did just get a straight buff. It now does an additional it does 5d8 hit points plus, or no longer using your spellcasting modifier. This is a change they've done with the law things. Honestly, just an additional d8 is probably going to be better than the spellcasting modifier. You know, maybe with a very slight point difference change, but this does allow, you know, a non-caster who would get access to this to just do the normal amount of healing. So that's good. And in addition, it now can be heightened every odd spell rank after 5th. It gets an additional d8. So Breath of Life now actually can just be a really good, you know, save if you're willing to use a higher level spell slot for it. So overall, I think this is a good buff for Breath of Life. Flame Strike has been changed to Divine Immolation, which just sounds way cooler, and it got a bit of a buff. It no longer does 8d6 fire damage, now does 6d6, but it does 2d6 persistent fire damage. And rather than removing resistance and giving a benefit to creatures who have immunity while removing immunity, now this spell just changes to spirit damage, if spirit damage would be more detrimental to the creature that is being hurt. Not only that, but it now has the Sanctify trait, so it can now gain the Holy or Unholy traits, potentially doing even more to those kind of creatures. So overall, Divine Immolation is still pretty much like the go-to divine spell that now does persistent damage, so it at minimum will do the same damage, and at best will do way more extra damage with the persistent damage. And because it will do persistent damage, any creature that has a weakness to spirit damage or holy, unholy, or even fire damage, technically, might get that weakness procced every turn at the end of the round if they don't get rid of the... well, they will actually automatically, and then they will then they have to get rid of it, the persistent damage. So overall, this is actually a huge buff to Flame Strike, and overall, I really like Divine Immolation. Elemental Form got finally the metal and wood added to it, which there was something about this. Maybe I think maybe it was in my Metal Kineticist build, the Rust Warrior, that this came up, because I think I was trying to put Elemental Form into it for some reason. But now we have metal, which does a d6 or a d8 slashing plus a d4 electricity, and as well it has a 20-foot fly speed, and it has a versatile blade that does either piercing or slashing damage. And then we have the wood, which has a 20-foot speed, a 30-foot climb speed, and it has the branch attack that does 2d10 bludgeoning damage, which wood is a little bit sad in my opinion compared to some of the other elements, but we have them now, and of course then the spell gets that trait, which can be useful for certain synergies. Overall, this was just an improvement that needed to come to elemental form, and now we got it. The hallucination spell now has the subtle trait, which is another good manipulating spell, so I'm all here for that. Cone of Cold actually got a pretty big buff in my opinion in this one, now being changed to Howling Blizzard, and it has a variety of things it can do. Now it is a 2 or 3 action spell, depending on what you want to do. In the 2 action version, it's pretty much the same. It has a 60-foot cone, and now you can go to the 3 action version, and you can essentially make a fireball version of Cone of Cold. It gains a range of 500 feet, which is nuts, and it creates a 30-foot burst, which I think is more than fireball. It's a higher level spell, so it makes sense. And as well, it still maintains, and it damage did get reduced a little bit, now no longer doing 12d6, but instead doing 10d6 cold damage. But with the added benefit of it now creates difficult terrain in the space that it creates. Now, if you center Howling Blizzard on someone with the 30-foot burst version, for instance, that difficult terrain is going to be devastating, requiring probably a minimum of 30 feet of movement to get out of it before they can even, get anywhere else. So that's pretty devastating. And the cone version as well, potentially creating a very sizable distance of difficult terrain the enemy would need to get to your character, depending on, how the scene is set. So that being the case, I think overall I like this much better than the previous version of Cone of Cold. Cone of Cold before was just a damage spell, but now this is a damage spell that one can turn into a very far range spell, and in addition has a pretty sizable area of difficult terrain that it can create, which I think is pretty cool. It also heightens the same. So, again, 2d6 damage. I mean, you can be upset about that, I suppose. I think this gives the spell a lot more variety and a lot more it can do for the caster. So I'm all for Howling Blizzard. All right, we got a name change here. The Passwall spell has been changed to Magic Passage, but otherwise stays the same. And another name change as well. We have Tree Stride now changing to Nature's Pathway, though I'm still a little annoyed that it still prevents you from carrying extra dimensional spaces with you. And so, yeah, you can't take the Bag of Holding, or now called the Spacious Pouch, with you still, which, I mean, that was kind of like the whole point, right? So, I don't know, but it was a name change, so nothing else changed. We still have the spell, so I guess it's not technically any worse. Another name change as well, we have Prying Eye was changed to Scouting Eye, which, I mean, I guess just makes it sound like it makes more sense. Scouting Eye was an addition. Prying Eye alluded to, I don't know. I like the name change more. How about that? Before I get too much into it and waste time. I just like the new name more. So, yeah. Shadow Blast just getting a straight buff. Now it just does a 68 base rather than 5d8 base. So it actually just a damage buff, which is pretty cool. Black Tentacles has been changed to Slyther and has been reworked slightly. Now, Black Tentacle, I'm pretty sure was already kind of named, because I was pretty sure it's like person's name Black Tentacles. Maybe I was wrong, but regardless, it has been changed. Now the target becomes, wrapped up in a bunch of snakes. They take piercing damage, so d6 piercing damage rather than bludgeoning damage before. And now they take an additional d6 persistent poison damage from the snakes biting them, though this is all relevant to the reflex save. Now, this is a bit of a save or suck spell. If the target does save, let's see here, actually. Okay, I see. It's somewhat different for sure. So before you had to make a spell attack roll, even though it didn't have the attack trait, against the target's fortitude DC. Now the targets need to make a reflex DC. Now if they succeed, unfortunately nothing happens, which is kind of similar to what happened with Black Tentacles. But if they fail, they take the full damage and are grabbed by the snakes. The escape DC equaling your spell DC, and as well, they take the persistent poison damage with along with anything. And as well, if they crit fail, they take double damage and are restrained by the snakes. This also does have a pretty good heightening. It didn't heighten before, but now it does heighten. The persistent damage from the snakes increases by 1d6, and the snake's HP, which the snakes can be attacked now based on the spell, increase by 6. And this is what they would need to do if they want to attack the snakes to essentially break out. So overall, Slyther is, I would say, not a bad spell. I do like the additional d6 persistence poison damage, and everything being based on just a reflex saving throw rather than making a spell attack against a fort DC that wasn't actually an attack roll or an attack-based spell was very complicated. So I think Slyther is good, and of course, as well, it is just another spell that got its name changed because of Black Tentacles. So, I think Slyther is still just equally as creepy in my opinion. And yeah, I actually don't mind the changes, and I do like the addition of persistent poison damage on top of it. Even though, yes, I'm aware a lot of creatures are just immune or resistant to poison, still, it's something that I feel adds to this spell. So overall, I guess I just kind of end up a little neutral on this one, but I do like how it can be heightened to do a little bit extra damage and to make it harder to break out, which, makes it very different from how Black Tentacles worked before. Stone Tell, the rank or the level 6 spell, has now been changed to the rank 5 version of Speak with Stone, right? Yeah, Speak with Stones. And it more or less just does the same thing, but now you can get it a little bit earlier, which overall I guess is technically a buff. You can use a lower level spell slot for it, or lower rank spell slot for it. But yeah, otherwise I don't really have much to say about it. Spiritual Guardians are more or less the same, though the damage has been changed as to keep up with the normal damage changes. Now it no longer does 2d8 damage plus spell modifier. Now it just does 3d8 damage. Cry about it if you want, I suppose. Regardless, it works more or less the same. Also, this one has the same thing with the Spiritual Weapon, where it uses a copy of a weapon you're currently, or an echo of a weapon you're currently wielding. So there's been arguments whether that actually changes things or not. I honestly don't know, and the rules aren't very explicit on it. But otherwise, the spell operates the same. Subconscious Suggestion now has the subtle trait, which is really good for you, manipulators out there. Now it's a lot easier to do this kind of thing in public. Summon Anarch and Summon Axiom, which I don't even think were in the initial core book, but they were combined together to make the Summon Monitor spell, but otherwise it operates the same. Does make sense. We no longer have the alignment stuff. So now we have, just monitors, which makes a lot of sense in all honesty. And yeah, not really too much more to say on that. Some name changes here. We got Cloud Kill has been changed to Toxic Cloud, which more or less is the same, so I'm pretty neutral on the name change there. And Tongues have been changed to True Speech, which honestly, that makes a lot more sense, because Tongues is an idea of like babble. It's someone talking. Some would say, like the language of the gods or angels or something like that. But True Speech, I think, more captures what the spell is intended to do, which is just, allow you to talk to anyone. So that being the case, I'm actually pretty happy with this name change in particular. All right, Shadow Walk has been changed to Umbrell Journey as a name change, and it's been reworked, I can say, very slightly. It uses different math. Now, each hour you are traveling in the Netherworld, as I guess this is something, I didn't realize this was a thing, but I guess we no longer have the Shadow Plane in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. It's been removed and instead replaced with Netherworld, which I'm sure is functionally the same thing. But yeah, so there's been a lot of interesting changes around that concept. But as I was saying before, now rather than the whole like every 3 minutes is an hour on the real world travel, yada yada, now it's each hour in this realm you travel 3 days, which I do think actually gives the spell a general buff. And I guess now it kind of has the same thing with teleport, where now when you arrive, you're not exactly where you are, but within a mile where you are. But otherwise, I think Umbrell Journey is just generally a buff, and I'm generally happy with it. And I also think it got more targets too. I think it changed from 9 to 10 willing targets. So yeah, overall, I guess just a straight buff for what used to be Shadow Walk, now Umbrell Journey. And another change, Crushing Despair has been changed to Wave of Despair. Otherwise, nothing really changed with the spell. And with that, we're done with the 5th rank changes. Now we're going to go into the 6th rank changes here. But if you're enjoying this content, I do recommend that you like and subscribe. As you know, no one covered the remaster content nearly as much as this channel did. And I intend to do much more for future releases and all things tabletop in general, as we cover more than just Pathfinder 2nd Edition on this channel. So, at least give this video a like so that other people have a higher chance of seeing it. Other than that, I guess let's go ahead and just continue. All right, here was an interesting change. Blade Barrier got changed to Blessed Boundary, which, despite the naming convention, which you would think would make the spell either gain, I guess it's sanctified, so now you can add the Holy Unholy trait. It actually doesn't do spirit damage. Instead, still doing the 7d8 force damage, depending on the save the creature makes when they attempt, or when they get put into the wall. But in addition to this, now it no longer creates a wall, and instead it creates a sphere, a hollowed out sphere on the ground, forming a shell that does mostly the same things. Otherwise, the spell remained mostly the same. I'm actually just surprised that it didn't do spirit damage instead, considering it's sanctified and the whole name change. But no, it still just does force damage. So honestly, yeah, this is, in my opinion anyway, a general buff. It now creates an area, a zone essentially, that is protected, a 60-foot burst rather than I think it was a 120-foot wall or something like that before. So yeah, I really don't have much more to say other than, I guess, technically a buff, but I don't think it reaches as high. So it just feels generally like the same thing, but and Paizo has gone on to say that you can use the old versions of the spell if that's what you prefer. It's all compatible, and nothing really breaks the game when you do so. So honestly, I can see a reason why you would go back to the normal Blade Barrier before, but I do like Blessed Boundary. I do think it offers a lot more protection, and because it can be sanctified, it honestly is kind of a buff compared to Blade Barrier. So yeah, just a very interesting change. Name change here. We got Baleful Polymorph has been changed to Cursed Metamorphosis. That was just one of those ones, a hangover from D&D. So this one makes sense. Cursed Metamorphosis feels a bit wordy to me, but especially because they still, that sounds like they get turned into a blob or something, right? But no, they still get turned into a harmless little animal. So it if anything, it just makes a spell sound way edgier than what the actual effect of the spell is. So kind of not a great name in my opinion, but hey, it's not a bad name, so I guess it's fine. It's whatever. A change that is, or not, sorry, this isn't a change. Something that I'm surprised didn't change was Disintegrate. Now, the name, obviously, though everyone's going to say, whatever, I don't care. But I'm surprised that it's remained a spell attack rather than just being turned into a save like many other spells. So yeah, Disintegrate is just exactly the same. So I guess if you liked Disintegrate before, well, you're going to like it now because nothing changed. Now, here's an interesting one. I actually did not think we were going to find dragon form actually in this book. I thought we were going to find dragon form in the next book because, as y'all probably know, if you watch the other videos, there's a lot of spells from core that just don't make it into this book. Obviously, there's been a lot of things. They're trying to adjust the size of the book in general, but dragon form especially was one I wasn't expecting because we're going to be getting new dragons in the new monster core, and they're going to be reworking. There's no longer going to be the chromatic or the metallic dragons, but instead we're going to be getting our tradition dragons, which is going to add some things. But here it is. Now, another interesting thing is there's no longer specific forms. Now you choose a type of dragon, a type of common dragon, or another type of dragon which your GM allows access, which is very, very interesting. And while you're in this form, you gain the dragon trait, which is obvious. But now they just have like a generic set of attacks, pretty much like all the same jaw attacks. And they always do based on the breath weapon, which you can see on the dragon, claws, whatever. I just find this very, very interesting that they would do this, especially because they have in here for speed, you gain a 40-foot land speed, 100-foot flying speed. You gain any of the following speeds the dragon chosen has, but with the listed amount. So burrow speed is 20, climb is 40, swim is 60. That's kind of one of the things that used to kind of differentiate different dragons. And now this is a bit more flexible for adding different dragons to the game, sure. It's just, I'm just very surprised. They've also added in an extra amount here for the tradition resistance for tradition-based dragons, which if you have a dragon with a specific tradition, you gain resistance to it. Like Arcane gives you 5 against magic. Divine gives you 10 against Spirit, which is kind of cool. Spirit, Vitality, and Void, actually. Occult gives you 10 to mental, and Primal gives you 5 to physical damage. So all really cool. This is just a spell I wasn't expecting to see here, honestly. It feels a bit strange because it refers to things that just don't exist in the game. Tradition and all that kind of stuff. Now, obviously, tradition resistance is if the dragon's magical tradition matches that of your dragon form spell, which is strange because that means that, if you're an arcane caster and you use arcane, it's just something that doesn't exist in the game currently. I'm excited to see where this goes. And obviously the dragon spell before Dragon 4, I can't even fit the whole thing on here, honestly. So obviously you can, that reminds me, I didn't move my camera again. So obviously, this is a bit of a weird one. I'm not unhappy about it, but it does leave me with some questions on what they intend to do, and will the spell get errated after the release of Monster Core? Who knows? But yeah, so I guess we have Dragon Form in here, and it does have some changes. Speaking on changes, we have a few new name changes here. We have Feeble Mind changed to Nevermind. So just a name change. Nevermind is, I think, a really bad name. Mind Blank, or maybe that, not even that. I don't know. I just don't like Nevermind. I think there just could have been a better name. Nevermind tells you nothing of what this spell does. So yeah, but we got that name change, I guess. Flesh to Stone was changed to Petrify, which honestly is just better. Honestly, like I understand the trappings from D&D, sure. But Petrify just makes a lot more sense, and I'm just surprised even D&D doesn't use Petrify. So yeah, one I'm actually very happy with. Fire Seeds actually got changed somewhat. It now is Tree of Seasons, and it was a bit of a damage nerf. I think it no longer creates the fire areas when someone uses the seeds, but now it does 4 different types of damage. It now can do electricity damage, fire damage, poison damage, or cold damage. So overall, I'm not sure exactly how I feel about Tree of Seasons. I don't even know why Fire Seeds got removed. Is it a D spell? I'm not sure. But yeah, this is a very interesting one indeed. And of course, as I say, removed, quote unquote, you can use old versions of spells if that's what you want more. Paizo's okay with it. Yeah, I don't have to keep saying this, but I'm going to anyway, because I know someone's going to get upset if I don't. So yeah, very interesting. I do think that the reduction in the damaging area is balanced out by the option to do different types of elements, though it just, like, it doesn't produce all of a singular element. Like Tree of Seasons feels less useful to me just because it's like, oh, we want electricity damage. Here, let me use a spell that creates a thing that you then need to use an action to pluck a seed and then throw one, when you could just use a spell that does that element. So I don't know. Tell me your opinions. I am curious to hear what y'all have to say about this one. I mean, technically, if you tally it all up together, it's a lot of damage. It's what, 24d6 damage? granted with a bunch of actions to pluck and throw the seeds. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this one, honestly. And one last name change here. We have True Sight True Seeing has been changed to True Sight, which I am a little confused about because I thought True Sight was in D&D and True Seeing was the name change. Maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe I'm just wrong. I'm not 100% sure on that one. But yeah, a name change. So all right, and at the end of these videos, towards the end of these videos, I guess, like I tend to do, let me pull up my list here. I will go over the list of spells that were in core that are not found here, but will probably either show up in player core 2 or will go into the void area of it exists on Archive of Nethys, but it's not going to be in print anymore spells. We have Abyssal Plague. We have Chromatic Wall. Actually, all the chromatic spells. We have Cloak of Colors. Death Ward, Drop Dead, Shadow Siphon, which Shadow Siphon I think is one that it has that kind of netherworld shadow plane thing. So I don't know if they're just thinking on how they want to rework that or whatever. I'm not sure. Synesthesia, Telepathic Bond, Collective Transportation, Purple Worm Sting. I know this one's definitely going to be in the next book because we're probably losing Purple Worms. And we're going to get another Purple Worm equivalent. So that's just what the name is going to be. But they probably just don't know yet as it's coming out in Monster Core in March. So this one I know for sure we're probably going to see again. And Righteous Might, which I'm actually very surprised about. But there's been a lot of divine-ish spells that I think are being moved for the purpose of, like the Oracle and Champion in the next book. So I'm not necessarily... I'm pretty sure we're going to see something similar in the next book as well. Spells removed. The only one that's going to be removed is Flesh or Stone to Flesh. They've already made a spell that pretty much gets rid of everything, or a spell before. It was in the, I think, rank 2 spell video. So a spell that removes Petrify is no longer necessary. So Flesh of Stone is just going to be removed from the game. And that's going to be it for this video. Hopefully it's not super long, and hopefully as well. Hope you all enjoyed. I will get the final video out tomorrow. I know these videos have been coming pretty late in the day. My apologies. Schedule's been kind of all over the place. But hopefully this helped you all out. And, well, that's going to be it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. Good luck with your games. Leave the bad luck to me. We'll finish up with the final video tomorrow for spell changes. And as well, Wednesday, I think I might just do several video releases for the release of the remaster. So look out for that. But until then, bye.